Now time to look at what the papers are saying, and we have Constance here on her second advent.
Yes, good morning.
Glad to have you.
Yep,
Yes,
good morning to you. Good morning once again. To look at the headlines today with us, we have Iwo Akera. He is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Thanks for joining us. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with This Day newspaper. In This Day, FG unveils new fiscal incentives to boost oil-gas sector. Israel declares United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres persona non grata. Engage military contractors to wipe out Boko Haram, Ndume tells Tinubu. So this advice was offered by Senator Ali Ndume regarding the terrorist challenge in the northeast and northwest regions of the country. Ndume says the military and the civilian joint task force are ill-equipped to eliminate the remaining insurgents, although he praised them for their performance so far. Iwo, what do you think of this advice? The use of private military contractors is increasingly common in recent years, but do you agree with Ndume's advice, or what do you think about his advice?
Well, the advice is a double-edged sword. It has implications for national security. What that means is that armed forces are unable to deal with issues of internal security. So for that, I do not agree. But on the other hand, I think the security issues is dragging for too long. Since 2014 that, it got to a peak. And we have been unable to completely stamp Boko Haram. And of course, Boko Haram has given birth to other security challenges, kidnapping, abductions, for ransom and all of that. So, but I think what the problem is just corruption in the fight against insecurity, not necessarily the incapacity of the armed forces to deal with it. It's just corruption. I think a lot of the money that is voted to combat security challenges is not filtering down. So that is the area the government needs to look at. We don't have to get PNC from South Africa or somewhere to deal with our internal security. That will expose our flank, will expose us as a weak country in terms of security issues.
You just made a very good point. PMCs are common these days. A lot of countries are using them. However, there are major downsides. You have mentioned some violations, potential destabilization, lack of accountability, add to the fact that they can just pack up and go. What are your thoughts?
Let's situate it well. These are contractors and businesses that help governments across the world in terms of military equipment, intelligence, and in combat operations. That's what they specialize in. Now, the question, one very poignant question to even ask is, because Ndume talked about the fact he eulogized them. I mean, the JTF there, the commander is dead, by the way, the head of the JTF there, and then the military. But he says they're not enough, and they don't have the equipment. So one wonders, how haven't we, as a country, been able to find or locate, or by intelligence or whatever, who are supplying these people these weapons? And how is it that they seem to overpower our military and security agencies? So these are the questions to ask. These are the things to search for. Because if you don't address the root cause of a problem, you're just beating about the bush. The question of whether to use them or not, he says foreign powers use them. If that is true, then you wonder, why can't we? I mean, yeah, there are downsides and upsides, but everything must be done to quench this horrible menace that is ravaging the country.
Right, and to that point on ill-equipped, I mean, we have been spending millions, if not billions, of naira over the years equipping the military. You wonder what's going on there. Okay, let's move on to Punch newspaper. A couple of interesting stories. LG polls, INEC withholds register as Fubara Wike's camps clash. NNPCL, Porto shutdown delays petrol supply, according to marketers. Governors in fresh move to delay implementation of the LG autonomy. And then FG stops VAT on diesel and cooking gas. The government says this is meant to boost investment in offshore oil and gas production. Also importation of key energy products and infrastructure, including diesel, feed gas, liquefied natural gas, compressed natural gas, electric vehicles, liquefied natural gas infrastructure, etc. Those will no longer attract value-added tax payment. This will be a relief to investors in this industry. It's a positive development and will impact consumers positively also, Igor. Do you think so?
Yeah, certainly, I think so. It will impact positively. It's coming at a time that ExxonMobil and some other international IOCs are divesting from the country. The reason they are divesting, well, we cannot really put our fingers on it, but many of the IOCs are saying that the cost of doing business in Nigeria is now high, a bit intolerable. There is instability in the electricity sector, poor infrastructure, road networks, and insecurity. Those are some of the reasons. And of course, the value of the naira to the dollar and then to other competing international currencies. These are some of the reasons that some of the international investors have given. So this is a good fiscal policy by the government to try and stimulate the energy sector. But I also think that for that policy to have direct impact on Nigerians, the cost of cooking gas must be immediately reduced. Electricity, putting people on band A or band B or whatever it is, that has to be immediately reviewed. Put Nigerians on a band that is affordable until a time that the electricity sector is stabilized. Then cooking gas, that's what affects many Nigerians. That will also discourage deforestation, because when people cannot afford cooking gas, it will resort to cutting down our trees, and that can adversely affect, also climate change, which Nigeria has signed on to a whole lot of the international agreements. So it's a good policy overall, and I think it will be helpful.
Nkechi, this leads us to the discourse again on how inflation is affecting everything, because that's part of the reasons why they're removing this VAT. I was watching the news yesterday and I saw that the Kenyan inflation has fallen to 3.7%. And I was like, wait a minute. It puts everything in context, because our inflation is over 40%. And I was like, that is why everything is so pricey. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable how high, recordly high our inflation is. And I think it has the government scrambling to see what they can do to mitigate those issues. Now, Nigeria's energy sector has been bleeding for years. So this policy is not surprising. It's something that I'm sure they've thought about, and it should affect Nigerians in a positive way. And I like the way Hugo put it. When you reduce, give tax breaks to cooking gas, it directly impacts Nigerians. This is something that is very essential for Nigerians. All Nigerians use it. And if it's not done immediately, like he said, it has an impact that even leads all the way to climate change. So when the government is thinking of policies, they have to think about all the factors, how it will impact Nigerians, how it will impact other sectors of the country as well. But it's a good one that they've done, and we'll just see how it goes.
Just briefly, Constance. Okay. Fantastic idea, but when you're looking at these things, you're thinking about, just like Nkechi and Ego said, how will you directly impact the people? The Tinubu tax panel is proposing VAT removal on food, education, healthcare. I think that should even have been done first before this.
Right. In fact, let's even talk about quickly the narrative on climate change and cutting down trees. I mean, the people that cut down, small trees to make firewood, I don't think they're the big culprits. The companies that are commercially inclined, that are cutting down whole forests in order to sell whatever they are selling, they are the biggest culprits. So let's give a break to, people, families that just,
Bimbo.
like, you understand that,
Yeah.
Bimbo and whoever, Ngozi and co. Anyway, let's look at the Guardian newspaper. In the Guardian, we have a couple of stories here. ICPC recovers over 13 billion diverted from government coffers in 1 month. On the Guba poll, youth storm INEC office demand redeployment of REC, confusion over Rivers LG polls as REC denies release in 2023 voter register. And then Tinubu jets off to UK amid lobbying for cabinet slots. Igor, your president has, he fled.
Well, interesting. You cannot stop the president from actually traveling. It's part of his duty. He has to engage other nations. So I don't think we should overflock that. It's a great report by The Guardian this morning talking about the 13 billion that was recovered by the ICPC. So by the president jetting out, if it is to engage in the interest of Nigeria, but that's beautiful. But we're also seeing a couple of the results coming in, his engagement, the vice president's engagement in China. We have seen that some investments are coming in, and it's good. So if it's going to the UK, I understand he's flying to the UK in his brand new private jet. I mean, that's going to be to the envy of many leaders across the world. But at a time that even the president too, or maybe the government is asking creditors to write off our debts, but you also have the president flying in a brand new private jet. It's interesting how the contrasting issues, add up. Really, it's a bit, that is an interesting aspect of it. But let's hope that the president going to UK is going to be beneficial to the country. And I also understand that the president is planning to go on his annual vacation. So we don't know whether he's going to the UK, he's going to commence his annual vacation from there, or he will return before he begins his vacation. But overall, nobody can stop the president from flying. After all, Buhari left the country for about 105 days when he was challenged health-wise, and of course he traveled so much during his tenure. We hope that the traveling will bring some goodies, but if the traveling is just to junket, I think that is the problem.
Igor, you made it worse. Nkechi come in here talking about brand new private jets. I
think since I've been reading this story yesterday about the president going on leave, going to the United Kingdom, there's been so much talk about it. Everyone has their opinion. But I think Igor is the first person to actually remind us that he's traveling on that brand new private jet that was so controversial when Nigerians found out that, look, in the middle of a storm, an economic storm in Nigeria, so many protesters still languishing in jail, no trial, impossible bail conditions. President, look at that plane. It looks really,
look at that.
Look at that. I think Igor is actually the first person to point that out. But I mean, I hope the president gets enough rest on his leave in the UK. And
all right,
back energized to help Nigerians.
Well, let's look at New Telegraph. In New Telegraph, let's see, insecurity again. Ndume asked Tinubu to engage mercenaries. Corruption will recover 13 billion naira diverted public funds in September, according to the Independent and Corrupt Practices Commission. It also says it's embarking on ICT reforms that will digitalize its operations to enable efficient investigations and case management. 13 billion naira alone in September is enormous. Shows the scale of the problem, Igor.
Well, that's alarming. Very, very alarming figure. It simply tells us that it's a revelation that the government there's a lot of leakages at a time that as I said earlier, the government is asking for debt relief. Who is going to forgive you your debt when so much of your money is being stolen by your own appointees? I commend, I think Adamu Aliyu, the chairman of the ICPC. I hope I got that name right. The ICPC is doing a great job without so much media bliss. They are not so much in the media, but behind the scene, a lot of work is being done by the ICPC. 13 billion in September alone. That is a whole lot of money. But what the ICPC did not tell Nigerians is, who are those that stole the money? And are they already before the court? There should be punishment for bad behavior. When people steal such humongous amount of money and you just reveal to Nigerians that 13 billion had been stolen, who are those behind it? We expect that these individuals should be paraded publicly. You don't just hide them and then you tell Nigerians that 13 billion had been recovered. Nigerians want to see those who stole the money. We also want to see that they get long jail terms, very long jail terms, that they won't have opportunity of returning back to public office. I think this is at the root of our national problem and crisis. So much of our money is being stolen by those who are in public offices, and this has to stop. The government has to deal with it. Corruption under the APC, I think, is really it's alarming.
Right. Great point, Igor. Ndi, appropriate punishment for misdemeanors such as this? Fraud, actually.
Ego, that's what I wanted to point out. Who are the people stealing? It's not enough. Fantastic, 13 billion. They're working, you could say. But take it a little bit further. Who are the people stealing the money? In China today, if you're found corrupt, you go. I mean, you just go. I mean, there are no two ways about it. Unless and until people begin to pay for defaulting on things, I think we are paying lip service to corruption.
Right. Okay, let's look at the international headlines for you. We'll begin with Citizen from South Africa. Sex, no means no. Men accused of sexual offenses can't hide behind, oh, I thought she said yes. After the High Court rules, the law will shift to an objective test for consent. This has been described as a groundbreaking ruling which will offer new hope for victims of gender-based violence. I mean, women need protection from sexual harassment and gender-based violence. Remember the...
Men need to.
Yes, men need to, but in most cases it is women that are more affected by that. Remember the case of the private Ruth Ogunleye, the military woman that was dismissed after she alleged that she was being abused by one of those in authority, Colonel I.B. Abdul Karim. There's really need for the law to protect helpless women, helpless men too, Iyo.
Yeah, absolutely. That law coming up in South Africa, and the courts also insisting that, when it is no, it is no. You can't force a woman when the woman says no. And then some men will say, oh, I thought she said yes, or her body language suggested that, gave the green light. You can't do that, But I also know that engagement between a man and a woman should be consensual, it should be mutual. But there are so many men out there who actually, I call them vultures. They are just waiting to prey on women. Some using their privileged positions, or others who are not even privileged simply resort to physical violence. We have also even seen cases, one of the papers report, I read it this morning, incestuous behavior by parents, fathers also preying on their own daughters. These are, we are living in terrible times. So the law has to be energized, has to be strengthened to protect victims, particularly women in this case.
Nkechi, let's talk about Nigeria. In many cases, people are powerless, especially in the prevailing, tough economic conditions. There's a lot of poverty. You find that women sometimes are forced to do what they wouldn't do otherwise because of this.
I think that's where it comes to power. I think whenever there's a case of sexual assaults, gender-based violence, there's always that element of power. Someone who is in a position of power, someone who's subordinate. And I think this is just a victory for victims of gender-based violence, not just in South Africa, but all over the world, here in Nigeria and all over the world. And I think the long solution is basically a world where we just remove that burden from victims having to prove non-consent, right? A legal system that fully recognizes the complexities of when it comes to trauma and shifts the burden where it belongs to, which is the accused. And so no sometimes is not always loud. It can also be silent, it can be subtle, it doesn't have to be loud. And it's a really, really good step. And it's a victory, I say.
Well, I think no should be loud, because if it's silent,
no is not always loud.
How do you then know it's not no? But
no
in the light of what is happening, the allegations springing up from Diddy Combs' case, it's no is no, should be no. Don't think.
No is not always loud. Sometimes it's silent, it's subtle, and it's still legally valid.
Or not saying no. No, what I'm just simply saying is be clear.
Right. Okay. Well, the argument can continue, but there should be laws to protect the powerless, especially in Nigeria and across the African continent. Let's look at the Guardian newspaper. U.S. wants Israel. We won't support attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. Washington in urgent talks to contain rapidly escalating conflict. The U.S. has told Israel that it's a no-no. Please do not bomb Iranian nuclear sites. You know, that will create a whole lot of problems for us. Igor, your thoughts on that?
Yes, I hope Israel would listen. Since October 7, when Hamas invaded Israel, and then from October 8 up until now, Israel has unleashed its military might on Hamas in Gaza. And of course, we are now in Lebanon, and Israel is moving very strongly against the Hezbollah that is entrenched and dug in Lebanon after the killing of their leader. Now, yesterday also, the Israeli IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, lost 8 of their soldiers, including a 22-year-old captain. So all of these issues are really revving up the tension in the Middle East, and with over 182 missiles barrages into Israel by Iran, Israel has also vowed that there's going to be a strong response. But I think Israel will be targeting some key infrastructure in Iran. Israel has not been happy that Iran is developing nuclear weapons, which Israel alleges is already above 80% level. So Israel is determined to take down the Iranian nuclear sites. Iran itself has vowed that Israel is a sworn enemy, that that country is committed to wiping off Israel from the surface of the earth. So I think the battle lines are clearly drawn. The only country that can weigh in now, particularly to break down the Israelis, is the United States. But Joe Biden has not succeeded in reining in the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu since his invasion of the Gaza Strip or even Lebanon. Yeah.
Let's briefly look at the Independent. Starmer pays back £6,000 worth of freebies, including Taylor Swift tickets. That's so funny. As millionaire donor faces Lord's probe. I mean, remember that UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer was embroiled in this freebies scandal. Now he's made to pay. That's accountability indeed.
See, if they break it down for you, so it's £598. So it's and it culminated in 6,000 plus above, and you're talking about 13 billion in corruption. It makes a mess of the. I mean, this is the Prime Minister, and the man is saying, okay, what I'm going to do now is bring out principles on how gifts should be accepted by working people. It's not like gifts is bad, but for people who are leaders, what should be the law or principle guiding it? And it says they're about to bring up that there's also the question with Lord Ali, and the gifts he gave to Keir Starmer. That's interesting. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, in some countries,
6,000.
when you receive gifts, you have to register it. You know, it depends on who gives the gifts and what the intentions are. I mean, in the U.S., you go to the lobby and, oh my goodness, it's out of this world.
You'll tell me that Obama and the wife, they were paying for most of the things that were used in the house.
Yes.
The wife came to say it, and Oprah was surprised,
Right.
That's quite interesting.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have for the newspaper review today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoko, as always, and Igor Akeraha for being here with us and sharing your thoughts on the newspaper. That's all the time we have here on Daybreak as well. Goodbye from me. Up next, it's the morning show. I am Kechi Nana.
Thanks for watching. I am Ndi Amu. Goodbye.